So children, in the previous video we have discussed up to what were the conditions that lead to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Now let us try to understand that what circumstances lead to Jallianwala Bagh massacre. As in the previous video we try to understand when we have initiated this chapter that frequent visit of Mahatma Gandhi to different part of the country is strengthening the national movement, by which the colonial ruler in India, they were so much afraid that to suppress that uprisings of the nationalist feelings and the nationalist movement, they have passed Rowlatt Act, and this Rowlatt Act was declared as a black legislation by the Mahatma Gandhi and the Congress, and ultimately all these issues has led to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. But in this video let us try to understand what circumstances lead to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. On 13th of April 1919, a public meeting was organized at Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar to protest against the arrest of national leaders. As I told you that Rowlatt Act has given a complete freedom to the colonial government to detain any persons if they feel these persons are threat for their administration, though they are not involved in any kind of unlawful act. So these things happened, and 13th of April a public meeting was organized to show their disliking about the colonial government of the detention of the national leaders. In this meeting, many villagers came from different part of the country and they attended the meeting. Meanwhile, the Governor General of that particular time, who was in charge at the Amritsar, he comes to know about this meeting that is being taking place in Jallianwala Bagh. So he reached in that Jallianwala Bagh along with his troop. He ordered the troop to fire upon the people, and that firing lasted for nearly 10 minutes. And in this incident, more than thousands people were killed and many were wounded. This incident is called as Jallianwala Bagh massacre. If you try to know or if you try to understand this brutal act of Jallianwala Bagh, you will be shocked to see that how a government, so-called colonial government, is treating the innocent people under their administration. It was a Baisakhi day. Baisakhi is one of the very important festival in the state of Punjab. In those days, when large number of people, right from the small kids, old age people, women, men, they gathered in Jallianwala Bagh. If I give you the description of Jallianwala Bagh, it was a park which was surrounded by the four walls, and it has only 2 points of entry and exit. Unfortunately, on that very dark day, the point which was used by the people to exit from Jallianwala Bagh was locked, and only one point was operational that day, which was used by the people for entrance and exit. In that day, when a peaceful protesters who were discussing or who were talking about this unlawful detention of the national leaders, those people, those innocent peoples were surrounded by the General Dyer and his troop, and there was a firing, there was a uncountable death. So many people they died. The act was so painful that cannot be described in the word. Some historian they write that when they fired over these innocent people, there was a flood of blood all over the Jallianwala Bagh. People were running here and there to save their life. The mother who were just carrying their baby in their arms, they found death. These small children, they holding their mother, their parents, their grandparents, they were crying. Some people, to save themselves, to save their life, they jump into the well which was just located in the middle of the Jallianwala Bagh. Seeing such painful scene, also the General Dyer's heart did not sink for the single time, and he continuously fired upon these innocent people. The act was so brutal, it was counted as a greatest human genocide in the history of modern world. If you see the impact of that war and the what kind of impact, what kind of influenced, or what kind of inhumanity is shown in that war, you can come to know if you try to understand the incident which has taken place in 1919 until 2019. There was a continuous demand from the government of India to the Imperial Legislative Assembly of Britain, which is a British Parliament. They have asked the Britishers to give a written apology for their such an inhuman act. It means the government of India or the people of India, right from the 1919 to 2019, they were keep on condemning this act of British officers. And ultimately 2019, that is exactly completion of 100 years of that incident, that painful incident, the British Imperial Legislative House has given written apology to the government of India. Now, why I am telling you this particular thing, that the British Imperial Legislature has given a written apology, I just try to make you understand that how painful or how inhuman act it was, that people's sentiments did not come down after completion of 100 years also. After this war, after this incident, whole over the country there was a great protest against the colonial rulers, and the British administrations were opposed. Now this is one phase of history. Now if you see in the parallel side of the history at the international level, then you will come to know that in the end of the First World War, you may be knowing about the Balkan Peninsula, which was so resourceful that most of the imperialist nation, they want to capture that Balkan Peninsula. And in those days, so many imperialist power like Britain, France, Italy, Austria-Hungary, Denmark, all they wanted to capture the Balkan Peninsula. and Balkan was ruled by Ottoman Empire in those days. Now see, as we know that till the end of the First World War, Britain was the world superpower. It was a world imperialist power. And finally, Balkan Peninsula was captured by the Britain. And after the capturing of the Balkan Peninsula, the Emperor of the Balkan treated so brutally. Lots of physical tortures, physical pain were given to the emperor, which was condemned by all over the world by the people of Islam followers. Means whoever are the people who follow the Islam religion, also called Muslim people, they have opposed the this act of the Britain in the different part of the world. Now see, such uh, such protest was organized in India also. The reason for organizing such protest was to show their disliking towards the British rule, taking the matter of the Balkan and how the Britishers has treated the ruler of Balkan. It was so inhuman act that not only the Turkeys, not only the people all over the world who follow the Islam, but in India also, against such treatment to the emperor of the Balkan, the Muslims community, they organized a movement, and this movement they named as Khilafat. Now what was the Khilafat movement? How did it become a part of national movement? That is important aspect to understand. Many of time we get confused whether Khilafat is a national movement or it is a protest. So if we see the history at the world level and try to understand that Khilafat is not organized against the colonial ruler in India. The Khilafat was organized to show their disliking, to show their hatreds towards the Britishers, taking the issue of Balkan and how the emperor of Balkan was treated by the Britishers. To show this disliking, the Muslims people or the follower of Islam, they organized this movement in India. Then this movement was initiated in India by Ali brothers. They were popularly known as the Ali brothers. Their name was Muhammad Ali and Sokhat Ali. The main aim of this movement was to protest against the injustice done in Turkey by Britain after the First World War. Thus, Turkey's Sultan had the title of Caliph. The Muslim considered him as a spiritual leader. So, as I told you, that people are so emotionally connected with the Caliph, means emperor of the Balkan. Now, when this protest was organized in India, and Sokhat Ali and Muhammad Ali, they approached to Mahatma Gandhi to give their support to Khilafat movement. Do you know, Gandhiji find this as a great opportunity to unite these two majority group of the people living in our country in those days. If you see why colonial ruler able to rule our country, then if you just go for little thorough study about this, then you will come to know that there were lots of factors. Firstly, they were economically earning lots lots of profit they are making in our country, that make them economically very stable in our country. Another aspect is that our people, they were divided by these colonial rulers in the name of religion, in the name of customs, in the name of different practices. As I already told you, that India is a land of diversity, and no doubt that diversity is our strength. But when this colonial ruler come to our country, they make these variations which we had and which was our beauty. They use this as their weapon to suppress us, to divide us, and they cultivated such a hatreds among our people for each other. Slowly our people who are just a follower of different religion, different customs, different ethnicities, they started to apart from each other. They started to get divided from each other, and that advantage British has taken, and with that advantage they started to rule our country. Now in such a conditions, Gandhiji was always in opinion that if all the people as an Indian come together and oppose the colonial rule, then colonial ruler will not able to rule our nation for a long period of time. So when the Ali brothers approached Gandhiji to support Khilafat, he found it as a very good opportunity to bring the Hindus and the Muslims under the umbrella and unified a national movement. As a result, at the Calcutta session of the Congress in September 1920, he convinced the other leader of the need to start the non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat as well as for Swaraj. Now what is Swaraj here? Swaraj means a country which is governed by its own people, means own administration, Swaraj. So this idea, when Gandhiji has placed forward with other prominent leaders of the Congress, they too convinced with the Gandhiji, and many Hindus and the Muslims, people living in the country, the then period of time, come together for the first time to oppose the colonial ruler in our country. Then let us see then what's happened next. What were the reasons for Gandhiji to launch a non-cooperation movement? Some of the important points were: the First World War added to the misery of the Indian people. Heavy taxes, high prices, famine and epidemics made the people life misery. This is one reasons why Gandhiji want to start a non-cooperation movement. Another, the past incident of Rowlatt Act, no, where the large number of people who were large number of leaders or the peoples who were detained without any reasons. Another, Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the injustice done to the Punjab made Indian angry. Muslim become unhappy due to the ill treatment of Turkey emperor, so-called Caliph. They started Khilafat movement. Many sections of the Indian society suffered considerable economic distress. In the town, workers and the artisans, the middle class, had been hit by high prices and shortage of food and essential commodities. Under the rural area, people and the peasants were victims of widespread drought and epidemics. The British were unmindful to this development. The Congress session at Nagpur 1920 adopted Gandhiji's the idea of non-cooperation movement. So these were some of the past incidences which were assimilating the people under the great leadership of Mahatma Gandhi and to organize a non-cooperation movement. So these were some of the very important point that to be understand that why non-cooperation movement was launched. It was not only to support the Khilafat movement. Yeah, no doubt the non-cooperation movement was organized to support the Khilafat movement, but beside that, whatever happened in the past, as I told you right now, there are so many factors. There's Gandhiji and the Congress, or Congress under the leadership of Gandhiji, they adopted the idea of non-cooperation in 1920 at the Congress session at Nagpur. After that, what were the effect of non-cooperation movement on the economic fronts? This is very important, and we must understand, then whole picture of non-cooperation will be clear to us. The effect of non-cooperation on the economic front were more dramatic. Now, when non-cooperation movement was launched, basically non-cooperation means Indians at no cost going to cooperate with the British rule or any of the laws that is made by the Britishers. So then how it's executed, how non-cooperation movements comes in executions, what were the things happened in that period of time. So firstly, foreign goods were boycotted. People started to boycott the foreign goods, and there was a idea of Swadeshi use, means the Gandhiji appealed the people to boycott the foreign goods and appeal the people of the country to use those goods which were manufactured in our own country. The reasons for this is what? Gandhiji want that if people started to boycott the foreign goods and if they started to use those goods which were made in their own nations, it's not only make the colonial ruler weaken economically, but in another hand it will boost the Indian economy system, or Indian companies or the small scale industries will boost up. Another, liquor shops picket. Now no liquor shops, no, people started to boycott. So many liquor shops were demolished. There were protests in front of this, and foreign clothes burned in the huge bonfires. So this is how they were just trying to show that how Indians now really in no mood or position to have any kind of cooperations with the Britishers. It means from the administrative point of view as well as from the economic point of view, now Indians has made a mind to oppose the colonial rulers. Now the impact of non-cooperation movement, if you see, or effect of non-cooperation movement, if you see, the import of foreign clothes halved between 1921 to 1922, its value dropping from 102 crores to rupees 57 crores. In many places, merchants and the traders refused to trade in foreign goods or finance foreign trade. So now you see, if you see the effect of non-cooperation, how the economy system or the economy aspect of the colonial in India is started to getting deteriorated. It means just in 1 year, that is from 1921 to 1922, where Britishers has a turnover of 102 crores, just come to 57 crores. Just imagine, just think, what was the impact of a non-cooperation movement? As the boycott movement spread, the people began discarding imported clothes and wearing only Indian ones. Production of Indian textile mills and handlooms went up. As I told you, the Gandhiji's plan was not only to weaken the um, British economy system, but in another hand, or simultaneously, he was just planning that if we boycott the foreign goods, then ultimately what happened? The Indian economy system boosted. Now, after that, uh, differing strands within the non-cooperation movement, but as the impact was so fast at the initial days when non-cooperation was launched, but with the passing of the time, it did not remain the same. If you see, when we think about boycotting any foreign goods or foreign items or any commodity, we must have alternative, because the most important aspect is what? When we utilize or when we use any goods, two important things cannot be ignored. That is, one of one is its accessibility, another is affordability. Whether the goods are available or whether it is affordable or not. That's why, with what pace the British turnover has come down from 102 crores to 57 crores within a 1 year, the impact has not seen for a long period of time. Why? Because of differing strands within the non-cooperation movement. And why for this? Movement in towns and cities. Now let us see how people have their own thinking, or you can say compulsion or thinking, or whatever you just think. From one point of from one angle, if you see, up to some extent it is also not incorrect to say that in those days we had a very limited manufacturing industries, or those industries also which were manufacturing, they were economically not much very strong. So as a result, now people have a different opinion. Now let us try to understand that. So educated middle class lead the movement in towns and cities. So another, educational institution, law courts and the council elections were boycotted. Foreign clothes and other goods were burned in bonfire. People began to use khadi clothes. Government servants resigned their jobs. Liquor shops were picked up. So this many things happened in different part of the country. Means whatever the people in those days from their side can contribute to boost the or to support the non-cooperation movement and to bring down the colonial rule, they did their best from their side. As we just try to discuss that what middle class did in the cities and the towns, how educational institutions, law courts and the council elections were boycotts, how the foreign clothes and the other goods were burned in bonfire, how people started to wear khadis, and khadi became a symbolic in those days. It's symbolizes as what national feeling or national moment. So how long it has or it is sustained? But after taking this many initiative also, non-cooperation movement as it got its pace in the early days after it's launched failed to maintain. Means it did not continue that pace in further years. So let us try to understand that why did the non-cooperation movement slow down in town and cities? 2 3 aspects. As I told you that when we oppose anything, when we boycott anything, we must have some alternative. If I just give you example today, you see, because of this pandemic situations, we were not able to have a face-to-face learning, which was very interesting than this, because we can exchange our ideas and uh, more discussions can be initiated, because it is comes from both the end. Now here, just from my end only. But even then, see, when we are not able to come for face to face learning, now I have come with the another alternative through this means, using my mobile as a gadget, and I try to, how far it is, I am very much sure that it may not be 100%, but at least something I can contribute to you, young minds. With that idea, I have come with the alternative. So, what I mean to tell you is that as today we are not able to come for face to face learning, but using this mobile as an alternative, using the net facilities as an alternative, we are trying to at least initiate something so that our learning process could take place. And why we did? Because alternative is there. So in the same way, if you see in those days, in the beginning of the non-cooperation movement, the pace was very high, but again it's come down. Why? Because when they opposed the foreign goods, that was very good. That was really shaken the colonial rule in India for some small span of time, that is 1 year, but it could not able to maintain. Why? Though people were willing to use those goods which were made in their own nation, on our own nations, but that was not available. And those days, our people don't have a good earning, or they were not economically sound. As see that khadi clothes were very costly. Let us take the example. The people have opposed the foreign clothes, and they decided to wear the khadi clothes. But do you think that all will able to use the khadi? And what is the value of khadi that we have discussed in the class 9, where about the Calico Act and all we have discussed. So khadi was so costly that the poor people were not able to buy it. Now another point, if you see, the Indian boycott British institutions like courts and the educational institutions, but they, in other hand, they have very limited educational institution which give them the education which is compiled of Western ideas. And I am not saying that India was not having education institutions. India had a far more better education system. Our education system was really uncomparable. But when you want to oppose somebody, it is very important to understand them, and to understand them what methods that Britishers were adopting to administrate our country. To understand that particular point, Indian need to enter in the administrative system, and to enter in that administrative system, their education system must be inculcated. Then only it could have been possible, because they have their own system of governance, and to oppose that governance, one should know their system of governance. That's why this Western education institutions were opposed. But in another hand, our education system was it was just designed, it was carry on as per our point of view, which suited to our minds, which suited to our society. No doubt it was having a great value. It has enriching the people up to great extent. But here only one logical point what I try to make you understand is that to oppose the British administrative system, first we need to understand their administration, and to understand their administration this Western education was needed. This was what I just want to make you explain. Or else I'm not comparing that Indian education system is poor or British education system is good. No, not in that sense. Now, so many British institutions and the law courts and the educational institutions were opposed. But on the other hand, we don't have much established infrastructure or any other institution which can give them a Western education, which was quite important to fight against the colonial rule. So, but alternative institution did not come up. Consequently, teachers and the children started going back to school, and the lawyers started going back to their courts. The court and all, if you see the Indian history, our land was so peaceful that rarely such things people thought of framing that court and all. Every such things was set up at the family level, at the village level. Okay, that is another aspect. But let us come to the main point of the history. If I go in that, it's again very broader concept. Now, finding no other alternative, slowly, with what pace British goods, British institutions, their educations were opposed, that pace the Indians were not able to maintain, as they don't have alternative. This is what I just try to make you understand. And finally, this causes for the slowdown of non-cooperation movement. Now let us try to understand what were the cause for the peasants movement in the countryside villages. Now this is one aspect of the urban areas we talk about. Now let us go to the countryside, means villages. Peasant movement in Awadh, a peaceful movement was organized by Baba Ramchandra. It was against the landlords and the talukdars. This movement, reduction of rent and the abolition of beggar were the main demands. In many places, Nai, Dhobi Bandh were organized by Panchayat to deprive landlords of services of even barbers and the washermen. In June 1920, Pandit Nehru began going around the villages in Awadh, talking to the villagers and trying to understand their grievances. By October, the Awadh Kisan Sabha was set up, headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, Baba Ramchandra and few others. Within a month, 300 branches had been set up in the villages. 300 branches were set up in the villages. So in this way, some another aspect within the period of non-cooperations had been seen in the countryside. Now let us try to understand a little about Baba Ramchandra. He led the peasant movement in Awadh against the talukdar and landlords. He demanded reduction of rent, abolition of beggar and the boycott of landlords. Landlords means you may be knowing about the Jamindari system. So Baba Ramchandra was against all these practices that has been taking place in the countryside. Now as just I told you that in October 1920 he formed a Awadh Kisan Sabha with the help of Nehru. This is about the Awadh. Now come to the another, this tribal movement. In the Golden Hills of Andhra Pradesh, tribal started a movement under the leadership of ALLURI, SITARAM, RAJU. The tribal want to get back their traditional right over forest. Now see, uh, do you remember the class 8 history where we talk about the Forest Act law? Now, Forest Act law, which was executed by the colonial ruler, which restrict the use of any forest material by the villagers. And if anybody entered in that village, they have to pay fine. And fine was so heavy, it was not possible for these poor people to bear. And if you see, not only this tribal area, or here tribal, this term is something very confusing. Here tribal, though indigenous people, when this Britishers has come, uh, they find it very difficult to understand their association with the nature, with the forest, and they were the indigenous people with their distinct identities, their distinct practices, and it was quite difficult for them to understand this group of people, and they just make it a very easy or simpler term for their convenience to understand this group of people, so called, who are indigenous. They are the original inhabitant of an area. They call them as a tribal people. So these people, when this Forest Act was launched, not only these indigenous people, I will call it as a indigenous people rather calling them as a tribal. So these indigenous people, they were closely associated with the forest. Now see, the reason why they were closely associated with the forest, they were living in the countryside, and this countryside, these were not much developed. There were no much big industries, big factories, or any big shops or malls as we see today. In those days, the villages has very different concept as we have today. If you see villages today, you will find every villages, every family have a car. There was a networking system, so many shops. Even though in every villages today get connected with the e-companies, but those days the villages means they were basically remained cut off from the mainland, as the colonial ruler has always neglected these areas. Why? They were not getting much benefit from there. They were just utilizing these people as their main force, only this much. And this Forest Act restrict this group of people, and long time they were fighting to get back their traditional rights over the forest. Why? Because most of their basic needs were fulfilled from this forest. And when Gandhiji launched a non-cooperation movement, it gave them a ample opportunity, because this group of people have a great faith over Gandhiji. Under his command, under his leadership, that they were also going to get a justice. The method followed by these indigenous people and the peasants were against the Gandhian method of non-violence. They followed violent method of struggle. But if you see one aspect where Mahatma Gandhi followed the ideology of non-violence, his all the movements were based on the principle of satyagraha, which consists of no use of force, use the truth, peace. These were the basic principles. This group of people, they wanted to support the Gandhiji. They were convinced with the idea of Gandhiji. They were adopting the ideas of non-cooperation as suggested by Gandhiji, but what is the basic principle Gandhiji has followed, that is non-violence and peace, they were not in support of that. They wanted to get back their traditional rights over the forest using the violence. This is one of the important aspect. Now let us talk about the Alluri Sitaram Raju, who was one of the prominent figure of this indigenous group of people, and he lead the movement from the front in the Gudam hills of Andhra Pradesh. Many people consider him as an incarnation of God. They believe that he had many special powers. Alluri Sitaram Raju was very much influenced by the Gandhian philosophy. He was very much closely associated with the Gandhiji and his idea. That's why, and he has such a popularity among his fellow people living in a village, that people considered him as a incarnation of God. And whether what is it exactly, people believe that he is a man of miracles, means he can do anything. So when he asked his follower to wear khadi and stop drinking, but he organized a armed struggle against the Britishers. One side, he was highly fascinated with the Gandhiji. He is very much pleasing with the Gandhiji's method, and following his path, he tried to make his people not to drink liquor. He appealed his people not to use the foreign goods. He convinces people to use khadi. But in another side, he too was not ready to follow the basic idea of Mahatma Gandhi, that is the idea of non-violence. So this is how in the indigenous, among the indigenous people, Alluri Sitaram Raju was very known, very popular, and he was a great supporter of Gandhiji, but he was not convincing with the some of the principles of Gandhiji. Now see, this is how the things are happening in the countryside during 1990. Now let us see the moment in the plantations. This is all about the different part of the countryside we are talking about, that during 1920s, when the non-cooperation movement was adopted at the Nagpur session, then what are the things happen in the urban we have already discussed, and now we were discussing that how the things are happening in the countryside, it means villages side. Now moment in the plantations. Workers in the plantation of Assam demanded the right to move freely in and out of the states. You see, the Britishers, they were very sharp, or this colonial ruler, they were very tricky, as they know that if the growing significance of the satyagraha, when they have witnesses, and if you see the different sub tribes that living in the country, some such tribes were also there which were not able to control or suppressed by the Britishers. Do you know one very important aspect of this? If you see the eastern part, Assam is so closely situated to Arunachal Pradesh, and the Britishers failed to establish their permanent control for a long period of time in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Like that, there are so many part of the country where Britishers were not success to hold their control. Now they were always in fear that if those areas people where the Britishers has already established their control, their dominance, if they get mingled with those group of people, they too may oppose the British rule, and they too may emerge as a big challenge for them in the days to come. That's why in many part of the state where the Britishers has established their colonies, they have implemented different laws, different rules and regulations. And in the same way, Immigration Act of 1859 they have executed in the state of Assam, and which took away the right of free movement of the people, as when the people of Assam, especially the plantation worker, heard about the non-cooperation movement, they moved to their village. They thought that the Gandhi Raj was coming and everyone would be given land to their villages. However, they were caught and brought back. Now see this, who were these immigrant workers? Means those were the forced laborer, you can say. They were the forced laborers who were treated like slaves by this colonial ruler. They captured these people and they took them along with them and made them work, and they had to sign a contract, and before completion of that contract they were not allowed to come back to their home or to their land. That's why in many cases it has seen that when this group of people heard about the non-cooperation movement, one aspect, another aspect, when the workers in the plantation of Assam demanded the right to move freely in and out of the states, it gives these forced laborers who were working in the contractual basis under the colonial rulers, has given them some scope, some opportunity, and slowly they started to come back to their home. Now this is one kind of big challenge in the different part of the countrysides the colonial rulers started to face, as they are facing in the urbans and the cities areas. So this is overall happening of the non-cooperation, that how non-cooperation was organized, how it is operational in the cities, in the towns, in the different villages. It means the non-cooperation movement was organized in different part of the country as per the people's and their own understanding. But finally, the non-cooperation movement too was not emerged as successful. Withdrawal of the non-cooperation movement. When this many things were happening in the towns, cities and the villages, suddenly Gandhiji withdrew the non-cooperation movement. Why he withdrew the non-cooperation movement? Let's try to understand that. Do you know the Chauri Chauraha, one of the very well-known place or historical place in Uttar Pradesh? In the February 1922, the people they organize a peaceful rally to demonstrate against the colonial rule, that they are not going to cooperate with the colonial rule. They organized this rally. Meanwhile, the police reached to that spot, so-called Chori Chora, where these uh, freedom fighters, we can call them as a freedom fighters, they were freedom fighters who were organizing this rally just to show that the Indians now are not going to cooperate with the Britishers at any cost. They reached, and to dismantle this rally, they did a lathi charge. In this lathi charge, so many, right from the small child, man, woman, old age people, all were beaten up. Now, this thing made Indians very furious. When these old age people and the women were also beaten up, that is also for no cause. Because the rally which they have organized, it was a peaceful rally. And when this act has seen from the British side, then Indians, they become very furious. And the same night, some of these protesters who were part of that rally, they went to that police station and they set that police station into fire. In that incident, 22 policemen were killed. Gandhiji was against violence, as I already told you. Now, whatever the movement Gandhiji has initiated, his movement was based on the idea of Satyagraha. Ultimately, this violent act made Gandhiji unhappy. One reason. Another, the movement too slowed down in the urban areas. As I told you, that many people who were just boycotted the educational institutions, law courts, and the various other institutions, they started to go back. They started to join back. Now he thought that it was not necessary to train the people in non-violent satyagraha. Gandhiji thought that it was necessary to train the people. Initially, when he launched that, he thought that okay, it was no need to train the people. People will understand him, understand his philosophy, understand his idea. But later on, when he had seen how the non-cooperation movement in the urban area slowed down, and after that also the most painful things happened with the Gandhiji was this, when in Chauri Chora that violence took place. And ultimately, with that view, he thought that people need to be trained. Now let us try to understand after that what is the significance of non-cooperation movement. So what is non-cooperation movement? When it is launched or adopted, what were the reason for its adaptation, we all discussed, and how the non-cooperation is being understood and is being executed in the urban areas and the countryside, the different part of the country. We have discussed that, and what was the reasons for calling of the non-cooperation movement, we have discussed. Now let us try to understand the significance of non-cooperation movement. What is the importance of non-cooperation movement? Non-cooperation movement was a large-scale mass movement. It attached common people from all social groups. This is one of the big point to be noted, because whatever the protest, whatever the agitations or struggles was organized against the colonial rule in initial days, people from all sections of the society did not participate. But this is for the first time people ignoring their various variations or differences based on caste, religion, customs, traditions, all they come together and they join the movement. First significance of non-cooperation movement. Second, non-cooperation movement and Khilafat movement went together, so they promoted Hindu-Muslim unity. Hindus and the Muslims, they were the majority of the group of the people living in the country in those days. So this non-cooperation movement, which assured giving support to the Khilafat, has brought these two majority group of the people closer to each other, as some sorts of unity is being seen after non-cooperation movement. Peasants and the tribals movements become a part of Indian national movements. Earlier, whenever any movement was organized, then this group of people, so-called peasants and the indigenous group of people, they were always kept aside. But non-cooperation movement not only brought this majority group of the people, so-called Hindus and the Muslims, but apart from that, the peasants class and the indigenous group of the people were also brought together. Fourth significance of non-cooperation movement, it was non-violent movement. So it is popularized the Gandhian idea of non-violent satyagraha. Whole country and all over the world, people has learned a new method of protest. No country in this world ever might have thought a protest could have been organized in such a way also. So this is the significance of the non-cooperation movement. So up to here we have discussed. So this is the second segment of the video. We have tried to understand relating this nationalism in India. So I will bind up with this and we'll continue with the another segment and catch you very soon. If you have any kind of queries, be ready with that. We will try to discuss. I know that many points are there to discuss, but in a this kind of learning, it is not possible to give you all the details, as history is a very vast and it's need a very detailed discussions and the explanations. But even then, my dear students, I am trying just to make you enhance whatever it is possible through this small gadget. Keep on watching. We'll coming very soon with the next segment. Thank you.